Will Democrats be able to stop Trump's MegaBill, the one big, beautiful bill that we've been covering the past few months? And it just passed the House and it is off to the Senate now. And the thing about the Senate that is important to note here is they can essentially pass majority of this bill through just a simple majority of 51 votes, as opposed to the 60 that would normally be required. Now there are, I guess, there is some silver linings to that. We'll get into it, but first I want to watch at least about 6 minutes of this video from MSNBC, and then we're gonna read what does the liberal media think that Democrats should do moving forward, and then I'm gonna tell you what I think Democrats should do moving forward, and then we'll also end off with some comments from Senate Republicans regarding the bill and the changes that they want to make. Let's start off with this.
New analysis now of President Trump's one big beautiful bill as it heads to the Senate floor after passing the House by one vote this week. So take a look at this chart. That longest line there is how much the bill would increase income for the wealthiest 0.1% of Americans, while actually reducing.
Remember, all this, you see, when we say that this is the biggest transformation of wealth, from the lower class to the higher class, which is already insane. This is it. This is why we say it. This is from Penn Wharton's budget model. This isn't, just something they made up. It's crazy. And remember what you have to sacrifice for this as an average U.S. citizen, a middle class, lower class American, Medicaid, Medicare, government agencies that are meant to help people, National Labor Relations Board to help people unionize, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is meant to give money back to Americans who have been defrauded by banks. And that's just getting started. And what do they get? What do they get? Nothing.
Income for the poorest 10%. This is according to Penn's Wharton School of Business. It also would drastically raise the deficit, and that's putting some Republicans on edge.
This will be the greatest increase in the debt ceiling ever, and GOP owns this now.
Senator, some of your House colleagues said the same thing, that they're not going to support the bill because it adds too much to the deficit, but then they ended up voting for it. Do you think the president could put pressure on you and others?
I'm not persuadable to go against the principles of conservative government.
Michael Hardaway and Brendan Buck are back with me, so welcome, guys. Michael, we're going to get to the Senate battle in just a moment, but first, what is your initial reaction to this bill getting through the House in the middle of the night by one vote? Were you surprised at the number of Republicans that were persuaded to sign on to this level of Medicaid cuts?
What a disaster. The bill is bad when they hold all of these meetings in the dead of night.
Look at all these cuts. Remember what I said earlier. You think any of these, you think the rich care about Medicaid, Medicare? Do you think they rely on that? You think they rely on SNAP? No. And of course, with all these being cut, and they're going to benefit the most from these programs being cut. What do the rich have to sacrifice for the overwhelming amount of tax cuts and wealth that they are going to gain from this compared to the average American? And this is from the Congressional Budget Office. This, again, wasn't just some made-up number by MSNBC. Just keep that in mind. And also, with all of this, they are still increasing the military budget by over $100 billion, over $40 more billion to the Department of Homeland Security and Border Security and all that stuff. So, yeah.
I think that, the fact that several Republicans who claim to have issues with the bill ultimately surrendered is not surprising. I think that what Rand Paul just said is interesting because if he's telling the truth, he'd be one of a few deficit hawks left in the Republican Party. You've got a $36 trillion national debt that no one seems to care about anymore, and that is incredibly problematic for the future of this country.
Brendan, this bill raises the deficit by 2 to 3, almost $4 trillion, depending on the estimate you're looking at. If it passes, have Republicans lost any right to complain about the deficit, or has that already been kicked off the GOP platform? I mean, it was there with traditional Republicans, those that preceded the era of Donald Trump, but are they there now?
To answer your question, no. The GOP, Republicans will always run on the issue of the deficit, and it's only when they aren't in power that they care about it. It's all they talk about when it's a Democrat in power, or if you want to do something that would benefit the middle or lower class, we don't have enough money. The deficit. And then as soon as they get in power, they just dramatically increase the deficit. I forget what the number was, but like 25% or something of like our entire national debt, like our current debt, whatever, like what, 36 trillion or whatever now? Like 25% of that, it might even be higher, I could be being generous here, was created under Donald Trump in his first term. Like, Republicans only care about the deficit when they're not in office, and they only care about it to stop any Democratic agenda. Once they're in office, they don't care at all. They spend, and gaslight like they aren't just completely running the deficit insanely higher.
I feel the need to put this in a little bit of context. So we're talking about very expensive tax cuts. In reality, these are an extension of what people are already paying. And I think we've talked about this before. While Donald Trump talks about this as the biggest tax cut in history, for most people, it is just keeping your tax rates the same. Now, there is a cost to that. Of course, the law expects the tax rates for everybody to go up, and therefore we're not getting all of that revenue. I think what's important to point out here is it was also the position of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to extend almost all of these tax cuts. And so when we talk about there being a $3 or $4 trillion increase to the deficit, while legitimate, and I think we should talk about that, I don't have a whole lot of tolerance for Democrats throwing their hands up in there and saying this is terrible when their policy was to extend the vast majority of that. And maybe it was $1 trillion generously that they were going to allow to expire, but they certainly weren't going to try to offset it. So I think if Democrats were in charge, we would have probably the exact same deficit number. Now, should we be more concerned about the deficit? Yes, I do personally do work on fiscal responsibility and think that we should take this a lot more seriously. And that's one of my frustrations with the party is everyone's going after Medicaid because they're so unwilling to make any tough decisions on other programs like Medicare and Social Security that need reform. And we end up in a situation where they are understandably, I think, extending the tax cuts, which have a cost, but have nowhere to look for offsets other than Medicaid, which is just a terrible political dynamic. Because as you said, the way that this ends up playing out for especially the lower income people is just really bad. So I just want to get that off my chest. And this is a bipartisan problem that we've had for many, many years.
Okay. I want to interrupt right there. So the first part of what he said in the very beginning about how this is just an extension of Trump's tax law in 2017, that is true. When he says this is the biggest tax cut in history or whatever, like, if this all passes, you're not going to see anything different. You're not going to see anything different. It is just a simple extension. It's not like your taxes are getting cut more, with the exceptions of like that no tax on tips or overtime, which there's a lot to get into regarding those as well. But that's all right. But where he says that this was Kamala and Biden's plan to extend most of these, that's just blatantly a lie. That is a dangerous, very dangerous lie that a lot of people would just believe because it's some asshole in a suit on MSNBC who is supposed to be an analyst or whatever the hell. Like, okay, real quick. This is Donald Trump's. This was comparing back in November what their two tax plans was. This is Trump. You can see the changes to income moderately. They start to really increase the more you make, okay? Here's Kamala's. Hers are what I would say a progressive tax system. Basically, the less you make, the less you get taxed. And the more you make, the more you get taxed. Biden and Harris both. Biden raised corporate taxes. Harris also was going to raise corporate taxes. Like, it was never a conversation. Like, their tax proposals are so different. Here's another plan from the ITEP. Impact of Harris and Trump tax plans on different income groups. So this is slightly different, but it still is showing the same picture. Harris minus 7% tax cut on the poorest. Trump 4.9% increase. Second 20%, 3.8% decrease under Kamala. 3.6% increase under Trump. And then all the way, you see this. Kamala would be cutting taxes here, it looks like very slightly, for the $360,000 to $914,000 range. And then when you get to $914,000 and above, she's increasing it while Trump's still cutting it. Just to say that they were the same and we were going to be in the same situation no matter who was president, that's insane. That is just a blatant lie, disgusting lie. Holy crap.
Fair. So, Michael, the bill has to pass the Senate, where it faces a bit of a math problem. There's room for 3 Republicans to vote no and then still have that bill pass. But right now, we have numerous GOP senators who have problems with it. You have Josh Hawley, doesn't want to cut the Medicaid benefits for his constituents. 4 Republicans don't want to axe the clean energy tax credits. And then there were a few Republicans, again, like we heard Rand Paul there, who thinks it doesn't cut enough and it adds too much to the deficit. Can Democrats exploit these conflicts, or will Senate Republicans fall in line like their House colleagues did? You heard my colleague Julie Sirkin asking that question of Rand Paul.
I think Democrats should exploit this. I don't think they will. And I do think ultimately that handful of Senate Republicans will surrender and they'll kowtow to this. The reality is that, for instance, the SALT tax and raising that is needed because blue states pay more money into the treasury that keeps this country running than do red states in the South. That is a fact. It is also a fact that you need these clean energy tax credits to help America win the future. We should protect those things, but I think ultimately Senate Republicans will surrender to Donald Trump as they typically do, and we'll have these horrific cuts for Medicaid and elsewhere. It's a shame, too, because the reality is that Medicaid is wildly popular and necessary. 97% of Americans say that they are affected by Medicaid or they know someone that is. And the overwhelming majority of those people are either working or cannot work. You only have about 6 to 7% of people on Medicaid who are able-bodied and don't work. And so there is no reason to attack Medicaid except, grandmas who need Medicaid don't have lobbyists. And that's why we have this.
Brendan, what changes might we see to this bill before it can get through the Senate?
I don't think a lot. Michael said they're going to surrender to Trump. I think they're probably just going to surrender to reality. There were a lot of Republicans in the House who wanted to do different things, wanted to cut spending deeper, wanted changes in tax policy. And this is just really, I think, the equilibrium. Now, will they tinker around on Medicaid? Will they tinker around on some of those green tax credits? Maybe. But there just certainly isn't $5 trillion of spending cuts like Senator Ron Johnson said he wants that you can find that have the votes. So I think they will probably, once they've sort of been on the sidelines, and once they take a closer look at it, I think they'll realize there isn't a whole lot of room to go. And so there's not a real reason to delay this. So I think they're going to vote relatively quickly. And I think with the House passed, it'll look very similar to the final piece of legislation.
We'll see about that, because even the smallest change right now could just offset the House, because it would have to go, any changes would have to go back to the House for approval. And with how hard the House worked to just fine tune this so that they could get the votes they need, it was crazy. We were covering it the whole way. So any changes could be disastrous. Anyways, let's read this article. It's going to cover what these guys think Democrats should do and blah, blah, blah. So the mega bill now moves to the Senate, where some Republicans are already speaking out about the changes they want to make. This means we are likely going to see a lot of haggling and deal-making over the next couple of months ahead of a self-imposed July 4th deadline. GOP dissent aside, Democrats may not ultimately be able to stop the bill's final passage, but they do now have a small window of opportunity to define the legislation and Trump's party ahead of next year's midterm. So far, Democrats have struggled to land a clear message of opposition, and as bad as Trump's approval ratings are, Democrats also polling at depressing lows. And yeah, I wonder why. It's because they absolutely don't have a message, except for Bernie Sanders and AOC, but they aren't considered the in-group or party leadership, so the rest of the party just kind of ignores them despite their polling and success and the massive rallies they've been holding. The Democrats are sure to hit back by spotlighting the bill's nearly $1 trillion cuts affecting the nation's largest safety net programs, including Medicaid and food stamps. The bill also ends many green energy tax credits and will repeal several other climate change-related aspects of the Inflation Reduction Act, including a $7,500 credit for electric vehicles, but I'm still not convinced Democrats will be able to effectively counter the GOP using budget talking points alone. However, they can still turn things around. Now is the time for Democrats to refine their message to the American public in politics. One of the first things you want to do is define your opponent before they define you. Without a so-called head of the party, the task is tougher, but it will also allow for the best ideas to rise to the top. Right now, some of the loudest voices have been some of the most ineffective leaders. Just look at California Governor Gavin Newsom. Newsom is a Democratic governor of a state that has a dominant Democratic state legislator and Democratic mayors, leading to the majority of its big cities. And yet, what has he done on affordable housing or other big Democratic priorities? Not much. Instead, he's trying to build national name recognition for a presidential run by palling around with MAGA insiders like Steve Bannon and taking center stances on polarizing issues like trans student athletes and getting grilled by Bill Maher. Yeah, Gavin Newsom, he's cooked, bro. Like, yeah, I don't want to talk about Gavin right now. He's cooked. That's all we need to know. Trump loves to talk about what he wants to do. Absolutely correct. Why can't the Democrats use the same playbook? Of course, they need to look like they're doing everything they can to stop the MegaBill, though in reality, they probably can't. So instead, they should probably hammer the GOP on easy targets. Take, for example, the Federal Aviation Administration. Oh boy. Yeah, this is... I agree that the GOP's actions on the FAA, considering what's been going on, has been terrible. But this is not an issue that's going to capture a bunch of Americans and rally behind the Democratic Party. Are you crazy? Doge's mission was supposed to be efficiency, so why didn't it start by fixing the FAA's antiquated computer equipment? Instead, it moved first to lay off staffers across the embattled agency, including specialists in roles related to aviation safety. Obviously, the FAA's troubles did not begin with Trump, but Democrats should focus on what's happening now. This Trump administration is treating people and our air travel safety like a formula on a spreadsheet, with recent polls showing American confidence in air safety, that air safety is dipping. Air safety is simple and easy talking point. Okay, like, I'm sorry, but that is not going to resonate. It's just not. And yes, that is just one small example, but there are many, many others. If Democrats can't find a leader right now, they should at least find a message. For my money, Michigan's freshman senator Alyssa Slotkin has nailed it with her talking about her war plan. The former CIA analyst says she wants to change her party's weak and woke is to go with a no bullshit approach. That's exactly the energy Democrats need to harness as the humidity descends on the hill. Oh my God. Okay. The last person I want to see anywhere near the front of the Democratic Party is Alyssa Slotkin. And the fact that this MSNBC's takeaway here was, let's talk about the FAA. Let's make that our main message, and let's rally behind Alyssa Slotkin, essentially. Are you kidding me? Okay, let me break this down for you. You want to know what you do to capture the American people, to win them back to the Democratic Party? You need to actually have a real message that will materially improve the lives of the average American. And yeah, you're going to look, these all may seem radical, but pretty much everything I name here is just like a commonplace in the rest of the developed world. Number one, Republicans want to cut Medicaid. You need to hammer them on that endlessly. And while you're doing that, you can't just say they're cutting it. What are you going to do to make it better? You should be running on guaranteeing health care to every single American, affordable healthcare, free at the point of service. No one should be going into debt or filing bankruptcy over medical debt. Number one cause of bankruptcy in the U.S., by the way. That's number one. Number two, Republicans want to pay you less. They don't want you to unionize. Look at what they did to the NLRB. We want to increase your wages. We want everyone, any American who works full-time, we want them to have a living wage. We want anyone who works full-time to be able to support themselves and not live in poverty. And Republicans are actively trying to dismantle the education system. We want to expand the education system. We want to offer free higher education to everyone, just like the rest of the developed world. Or you can go with the, if you want to really hammer on the budget, Republicans claim they care about the debt and the deficit. Then why are they cutting your health care while pumping billions more into defense and border security, and also increasing the debt ceiling by like 4 or 5 trillion, maybe a little under 4 trillion. Like, what are we talking about? You would want to run, we would still cut your taxes, but we would be raising corporate taxes and taxes on the wealthy so they pay their fair share. And that would address the deficit without compromising the social safety net that you rely on. Like, it's that simple, okay? and you want to say, oh, that's too radical, we could never do that in America. If Donald Trump can just somehow convince like half of the country that his policies are good, that a 25% tariff on everything is good for the United States, you can convince people that free healthcare and free education and a livable minimum wage is good. Like, oh my God. Okay. Also, if they pass this bill by budget reconciliation, the silver lining is that that would eliminate fiscal provisions. So, for example, the 10-year moratorium that they want to put on AI, basically hindering the state's ability to regulate AI like in their own respective state for the next 10 years. That wouldn't make it contempt enforcement. Ooh, this is a big one that people are talking about, where they can essentially strip the power from courts and take away the little enforcement they already have by cutting, what was it? It was preventing federal courts from using appropriated funds to enforce findings of contempt. So that wouldn't make it either. Now, could the Republican Party just say, yeah, this is somehow fiscal and we're going to do it anyways and blah, blah, blah. That's entirely possible, and that's going to be a whole nother can of worms to get into. But let's read some remarks from Republicans over the weekend. In an appearance on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin said he is pushing for deeper spending cuts. We need to be responsible. He said the first goal of our budget reconciliation process should be to reduce the deficit. This actually increases it. Johnson said he believes there are enough Republicans with concerns about the bill to stop the process until the president gets serious about spending reduction and reducing the deficit. Republicans control the Senate 53-47 and have invoked special rules that will allow them to pass the package with a simple majority and bypass Democrats who have slammed the bill as a scam. But there's little room for disagreement over the package, which combines tax breaks, spending cuts, border security, funding, and other priorities. Johnson told CNN's Jake Tapper that the bill was the only chance to bring federal spending levels back to pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels. He said Republicans need to examine spending line by line like Doge has done. Oh, God. Senator Ron Paul of Kentucky has said that he will not consider supporting the bill unless the increase to the debt ceiling is taken out. Well, Ron Paul, I don't know how you're going to this bill can't pass without increasing the debt ceiling because of how much it's going to jack up our debt and deficit. Like, you just have to. Do I want that? No, but that's just reality. Let's see. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri and others have voiced concerns about changes to Medicaid in the bill that could lead to millions of people losing coverage. He warned colleagues in an op-ed published in the New York Times this month that cutting health care to pay for tax breaks would be morally wrong and politically suicidal. I hate when Senator Josh Hawley is the only base person in this conversation. President Trump told reporters on Sunday, I want the Senate and the senators to change, to make the changes they want. We'll go back to the House and we'll see if we can get them. Trump said in some cases, those changes maybe are something I'd agree with, to be honest. House Speaker Mike Johnson on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday said, I met with the Senate Republicans, all my colleagues, over the last week on Tuesday at their weekly luncheon, and I encourage them to do the work, of course, as we all anticipate, but to make as few modifications to this package as possible, because remembering that we have to pass it one more time to ratify their changes in the House. Johnson said that we are not cutting Medicaid in this package, but working to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. You're a fucking liar. You are a liar. You even said it yourself that you're cutting Medicaid for those who are undeserving? Healthcare is a human right. Everyone deserves healthcare no matter what. Okay, I'm sorry. Call me a fucking communist. Jesus Christ. What a snake, man. Waste, fraud, and abuse. It's been proven by independent studies and internal audits time and time again that there is very little waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, you name it. You know where there is waste, fraud, and abuse? The Pentagon. Oh no, but we can give them another 100 and however many $billion. Senator Josh Hawley told NBC News after the House passed the bill, the Senate will basically write its own version of the bill, and I just want to make sure that there are no Medicaid benefit cuts. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, the Republicans' big beautiful bill is trying to force through the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, That's not beautiful, that's ugly, and it will rip healthcare away from millions. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, oh God. Far-right extremists barely got the GOP tax scam out of the House. Keep the pressure on them and we can stop them in the Senate. Yeah. Republicans have set a July 4th deadline for both chambers to pass the bill. The Senate is not expected to take up the bill until early June, but any changes will need to be negotiated and ultimately passed by the House before Trump can sign it into law. All right, this has gone on a lot longer than I wanted to, but I want to just cover all that and just... This hurts my head, man. These people are just so dishonest. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and I will see you in the next one. If you made it to this point in the video, I just want to give a special thank you. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button down below, and if you really enjoyed it, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button while you're down there. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I will try to reply to any and all comments that I can. Until next time, watch that video on screen.